Shalom, Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom, Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I couldn't really hear you. Let's try that again. Shabbat Shalom. Much better. We have to work on being as loud as our preschool ECC kids are when they're here in the morning because they scream Shabbat Shalom. So we'll work on that, don't worry. But it is certainly a very holy Shabbat tonight as we welcome our friends Joe and John Ivester. We're so delighted that you're here. And after our Shabbat service tonight, for those of us who are able to stay, we would love to have you as we learn from Joe as she shares with us about her family's transgender journey and her book, Never a Girl, Always a Boy. Then we will have the opportunity to ask questions and deepen our learning and also get our book signed, which is so exciting. Tonight, let's open our hearts in prayer as we celebrate the light of Shabbat and the unique light that each individual has inside of their soul. We sing together Hine Matov, a special version that can be found on your song sheet.
Let's light up the world, Kurlani Be'yahad, together with peace and love. Bring light to the world, Be'or Panecha, and say Hine Matov. Yananai, Yananai, Hine Matov. Yananai, Yananai, Shevet Achim, Shevet Achim Gam Yahad. Let's light up the world, Kulanu Be'yachad, together with peace and love. Bring light to the world, Be'or Panecha, and sing Hine Matov.
Joe and John, it is such a delight and an honor to invite you both up to light the Shabbat candles in our sanctuary. And it really just symbolizes all the light that you are bringing to our community, and that for many of us who have read your story have felt that light in our hearts. So thank you so much. Come on up. And we are going to be reading a special prayer on our song sheet under the candle lighting.
Thank you. A blessing of gratitude for a life lived with friends, family, and partners of many genders and sexual orientations. Creator of light, source of wisdom, You know the depth of the human soul. May we, as we watch the two flames of memory and practice enlighten this space, remember all parts of our stories and make space for all that we are. Creator of light, source of wisdom, may your light fill every inch of our bodies, and may it exceed all forms.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehat likner Shel Shabbat.
And now, for our Kiddush, I would love to invite up anybody in our community who has recently or is about to celebrate a simcha. So if something joyous is happening in your life, big or small, please come on up, and all you have to do is stand up here and hold the Kiddush cup. So there's no pressure. Anybody want to come on up for a simcha? Oh, wonderful! And everyone else who, as you are able, please rise as we turn to page 5 for the Kiddush. And before we start singing, we'll have our simcha honors share what is going on.
Share. Oh, what you're celebrating? I guess we're celebrating joy because he was just so excited about the opportunity to come up.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'ratzon hinhilanu zikaron lema'aseh bereshit ki hu yom tehillah lemikrahei kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshcha be'ahava u'ratzon hichaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat Amen.
L'chaim! Thank you for the sweetness that you two bring to our community. And we're so glad you're here. You're going to go sit back down in your seats as we turn to Lecha Dodi on page 20 as we celebrate Shabbat like a wonderful wedding.
Shabbat, שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד השמיענו אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד לשם תפארת ולתהילה Shabbat lechu v'lecha ki mekor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'machashava Tehila Ateret bala Gam besimcha uvtola Tokemune Am segula Boichala
We turn now to page 26 for the Hatzi Kaddish.
Yitkada v'yitkada shemei rabba B'yama divrach yirte v'yamlich malchute B'chayechon uv'yomehon Uchayedecho beit Yisrael Ba'agala Uvizman kariv V'yimru amen Yehei shemei rabba mevarak Le'alam almei almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitba'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh V'yithadar v'yidaleh v'yidhalal Shemei dekudasha brichu Le'ilam im kol birchata v'shirata Tum shvechata v'nechemata Damin ram be'alma V'yamaru amen.
Page 28, our call to worship the Baruch Hu.
Yada
We turn to our prayer sheet, our song sheet again for a special reading for Ma'ariv Aravim. Let's pray together, Twilight People. As the sun sinks and the colors of the day turn, we offer a blessing for the twilight. For twilight is neither day nor night, but in between. We are all twilight people. We can never be fully labeled or defined. We are many identities and loves, many genders and none. We are in between roles at the intersection of histories or between place and place. We are crisscrossed paths of memory and destination, streaks of light swirled together. We are neither day nor night. We are both, neither and all. May the sacred in-between of this evening suspend our certainties, soften our judgments, and widen our vision. May this in-between light illuminate our way to the God who transcends all categories and definitions. May the in-between people who have come to pray be lifted up into this twilight. We cannot always define. We can always say a blessing. Blessed are you, God of all, who brings on the twilight. And we continue now with our reading for Ahavat Olam. You have loved the people Israel with a never-ending love. You have given us your Torah, laws, and statutes to guide us so that our lives may be filled with holiness and happiness. We know that we must find ways to strengthen our faith and hope in you. Your Torah acts as our inspiration. Help us, O God, to find ways to renew our commitments as Jews. Teach us to feel proud of all our identities. For you, Eternal One, made us as we are. We say, praised are you, source of all, who is the lover of the people Israel and all people. And now we turn to the Shema on page 34. Seated. On page 37, we pray together at the top. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot, so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai, your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai, your God. And now on page 40, we prepare to sing together the Mi Chamocha prayer, and we know that this prayer is a reminder to us. Every Shabbat when we come together and we sing this song, it reminds us that although the Israelites were marching toward freedom, there is not currently freedom in this world for every individual, and we're still working on that. And it's going to take each and every one of us to stand up for justice and to do the right thing and to try our best to create a world where every individual can be free and can be cherished and embraced for exactly who they are without having to hide and without having to be somebody else, that they know that they are loved just for who they are. And we all can play a part in creating that world. Let's sing together, Mi Chamocha.
Who is like you? Adonai. Who is like you? Adonai. Ya na na na, ya na 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 na, ya na 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 na, ya na 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 na.
And now we are ready for our tefillah, the heart of our prayer. So please rise as you are able as we turn to page 46.
Adonai Sefatayv Tifta Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanor El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim Vekonei Hakol Vezocher Hasdei Avot V'Imahot Umevi Gelula Livnei V'Nehem Lema'an Shemo Be'ahar Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mekayeh HaKol Atah Rav Le'Hoshia Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem Mekalkel Chaim B'Chesed Mekayeh HaKol B'Rakamim Rabim Sohomek Noflim V'Rofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot Ulmida Melach Melech memit u'mechaye u'masmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman ata lehayot hakol Baruch ata Adonai mekayeh ha'akol Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalu hasela Baruch ata Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh.
Please be seated. Should be with you singing. Okay. We turn now to page. We turn to page 59. At this point in our service, we turn our hearts to gratitude and we celebrate all of the wonderful blessings in our lives. And tonight, as we have such a strong community together here in person and in spirit online, we know many of us are on a live stream right now joining us, we can feel the positive energy and we can feel the sense of community that none of us are alone. So we know that even during times of struggle, we have much to celebrate, and I would like to invite those who are comfortable to share something from your heart that you are feeling grateful for tonight, and please know that it will uplift our community, so don't be shy. Who would like to share first? Thank you. We'll start over here. We'll work our way around.
I think 4 friends have had surgery in the last couple weeks, kind of serious surgeries, and they've all done very well, so I'm grateful for that.
Beautiful. Jackie, good to see you.
Oh, just that I've heard from both of my grandchildren, and they're doing well at university.
Good, your grandchildren are doing well. That's wonderful. Did you want to share?
One of my good friends had lost his wallet, which was heart-wrenching, and he goes through all the problems of stopping his cards and getting copies, and well, today he found it.
Anybody over here want to share? Anybody? Me. We're gonna give everyone an opportunity. Anything you're grateful for? Thank you.
I'm grateful to be warmly received by your congregation as a snowbird and widow from Manitoba, so it's nice to be here on Shabbat.
We're so glad you're here. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes.
So I'm grateful, Rabbi, that you have started an adult B'nai Mitzvah class. We had our first meeting on Sunday. It was a nice, big, diverse, amazingly diverse group, and I'm very excited and grateful to be participating in that.
Thank you. Thank you for participating in that. And we'll pass it down.
And I am grateful for the 20-odd women who showed up last night for the Women's Spirituality Group. We all feel so much closer to each other. There was an incredible connection, and I am just grateful for everyone who is there, and I'm grateful for everyone who's going to come next time.
Well, we're grateful for you, Myrna, for starting that. Thank you.
Well, someone stole mine, because I was going to say the B'nai Mitzvah class. So I'm just going to say the new friends that I've made in the B'nai Mitzvah class.
Great lines, right?
Okay, Rabbi Ling.
Rabbi Lee.
So, what
What were you grateful for?
I'm grateful for playing with my mom. I got an invention to build, so it's called the Think Tech. I'm almost done. Even the Dream-O-Matic.
Oh, no, I share one. Okay, on the spot. Well, oh my gosh, I have so many I could share. I went to Pass a Grill this morning with my children and my husband, and we had a lovely time on the beach together, and it was a great way to start Shabbat. So I'm feeling that peace in my heart. Did anyone else over here want to share what they're grateful for?
Sure. I am grateful to the artists who completed our annual Artist in Residence mural, courtesy of the Thelma Rothman Endowment. So I welcome you to come visit it next week after our kids have a chance to put their stamp on it.
It looks beautiful. We're going to keep sharing the mic. Anybody else want to share? Thank you.
I'm grateful to be here in Florida because the weather is wonderful and I'm from Ontario.
Thank you for being here and enjoying the good weather. Great. We'll pass it down. Judy?
I'm grateful that we have such a big community tonight to say the Mourner's Kaddish with those of us having a yortzeit.
And I'm grateful, speaking of adult B'nai Mitzvot, that I think I'm about to really feel like I know my cantillation for my bat mitzvah in New York next month.
Wonderful. That takes a lot of work. Well, there's certainly a lot to be grateful for. We have one more from Joyce.
I've got my mic, but I just want to say that, and I don't say this lightly, but I am grateful for each of you for coming to join us in person as well as online, because you guys are such a great grounding for me each week. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Joyce. And we thank you so much for all of your spirit and your music. We are now going to share the Hebrew blessing for gratitude on page 59. Baruch atah Adonai hatov shimcha olcha na'eh lehodot. And now we'll turn to page 60 for a prayer for peace. Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Israel Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Israel Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'enecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
We take time now to pray for all of those loved ones who are in need of healing. And if you yourself are in need of healing, please know that we're praying for you too right now. We pray for Alan Davis, Rick Edmonds, Stephanie Margolis, Marjorie Mitchell, Betty Morgenstein, Joel Newberg, Tzvi Dov Ben Binyamin Vishendel, Lisa Starks, Julie Weaver. We pray for Janice Anderson Graham, Madeline Arabia, Patty Bregman, Mariah Sklar Cardoso, Rusty Cluck, Wendy Cohen, Alyssa Freeman, Robert Friedman, Jordana Fuller, Robert Gilner, Stephen Goldstein, Barbara Hansen. We pray for Kara Herbst, Julie Mendel Hoffman, Stephen Kerr, Goran Kitchik, Nancy Lambert, Frida Sarah Levin, Mark Lyman, Angela Merceret. We pray for Betty Schroeder, Ron Seidel, Lori Sarah, Eva Simons, Deanza Smith, Meryl Stern, Glenda Stewart, Liviana Soltzer, Lida Tate, Goldie Thompson, Eugenia Wands, Steve Weiss, Nancy Scher Weiss, Matthew Sternberg-Yee. If you are praying for someone in need of healing, please hold them in your heart now and whisper their name aloud as we sing together Misha Berach on page 253.
Misha Berach Avorteinu Mekor Avraham Limorteinu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imorteinu mekor Avraham lamorteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We take a moment now for a silent prayer, and then we will return with the singing of Oseh Shalom on page 62.
Oseh Shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Oseh shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom,
We turn now to page 282. I invite you to rise as you are able, and we would love to call up anybody who would like an honor tonight to please come on up and open our ark doors. We would love to have you up on the bima. We need at least one more person, so please come on up. Oh, perfect. I can always count on Rabbi Lincoln.
עלינו לשבח לאדון ככל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
Yasher Kolach, thank you so much. We remain standing as we turn to page 294. Our hearts turn now to all of those dear loved ones who have died. And we know that many of us are feeling the pain of a loss, whether it was recent or even a long time ago, that we are missing those people who touched our lives. And it is so important for us to remember to support each other and to continue checking up on people months and years after a loss and make sure that they feel that they have a friend, they have a community, because we all know what it's like to really miss someone. And sometimes we don't share that with people when we're suffering, but we all have those moments. We remember Ronald Bramesco, who died in recent days. We commemorate the yard sites of Rose Banks, Frida Bennett, Deborah Bertotti, Deborah Borsick, David Kahns, James Durham, David Tecumseh Fieldison, Sidney Feinberg, William Graff, Ben Greenfield, Kate Berger Gross, Max Haber, Joan Halperin Rabin, Johnny Hartman Rogers, Mark Hershkowitz, Morris Jenkins, Rhoda Jenkins, Carol Kalish, Katie Kiley, Michael Levine, Ella Mahler, Beatty Weiss Mendelson, Virginia Negretti, Kenneth Charles Noble, Helen Procharsky, Abe Perlman, Franklin Rose, Louise Rosen, Julia Rosenbluth, Seymour Rosenthal, Hilda Samler, Lee Samler, Harry Schwartz, Fanny Sembler, Milton Shapiro, Theodora Sherry, Brian Shavlin, Milton Simmons, Harry Simon, Shirley Siskin, Jules Stern, Shmuel Lazar Storr, David Waterman, Charlotte Weintraub. If you are remembering a loved one who has died, or if I have mispronounced one of the names of one of our loved ones, please feel comfortable to share their name at this time.
Mike Frankel. Tom Kramer. Nancy Marcus. Sally Blackman. Soccer Biles.
Thank you.
Andy Friedrich.
Abraham Dagner.
Rabbi Mark Golub.
David King. We pray together the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divrach Hirutei Ve'amlich Malchutei, B'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam Olmei Almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei d'kudesha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nehemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shmama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim alinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Alinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. And may their memories always be for a blessing. Please be seated. And now for our announcements. Jason, thank you so much. We're so glad that you and Leora are here tonight.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
So, excuse me, Rabbi Mangold and Joyce, thank you so much again for a great service this evening. We are so excited to hear our guest speaker, Jo Ivester, share her incredible journey with us very shortly. To those joining us on the live stream, thank you for being a part of our online family. We appreciate having you here with us. Tomorrow morning, tomorrow morning, rain or shine. Want everyone to rise, but rain or shine. Meet us in the Pioneer Park for our second Saturday Shabbat at the market. We'll have a brief service, even if we are standing in the rain, and then head over to St. Pete's Saturday morning market. We have some great events starting Sunday through Thursday, so be sure to please check our website or social media pages for what's coming up. Next Friday, February 17th, we will celebrate the importance of advocating for reproductive health, rights, and justice during our special Repro Shabbat. Laura Gurin Rodriguez will be our guest speaker. Laura is the Florida State Policy Advocate Chair for the National Council of Jewish Women, and the service will be followed by a special fancy schmancy oneg by the Bloom family in honor of Barbara's B'nai Mitzvah on the 18th. We know there's a lot of information I've just shared with you, so you can find more details in your weekly e-scroll, and always check the events webpage for more details. Thank you all, and Shabbat Shalom again.
Shabbat Shalom.
Well, at this time, I know the reason that many of us are here is because we are so excited to hear you, Jo. So I want to say Shabbat Shalom to everyone who isn't able to stay tonight, but for everyone who is able to stay, we are really looking forward to now transitioning to this presentation. So I'd like to briefly introduce you, if that's okay. So Jo Ivester was raised in a politically active family. In 1967, when she was 10 years old, her father moved their family from Boston to an all-black town in the Mississippi Delta, where they were drawn into the heart of the civil rights movement. Because of this experience, Jo is committed to advocating for equal rights for all. Her best-selling, award-winning memoir about her family's time in the Mississippi, The Outskirts of Hope, has led to numerous speaking engagements about racial relations. That's amazing. In the last few years, she has broadened her focus to raise awareness about the transgender community and now serves on the boards of Equality Texas, the Anti-Defamation League of Central Texas, and the Texas chapter of GLSEN. When not involved with when not involved with family, writing, or social justice, Jo enjoys skiing, walking on the beach, and swing dancing with her husband. That's wonderful. She attended classes at Reed College, completed undergraduate work in engineering at MIT, earned an MBA from Stanford, and now lives in Austin, Texas. So we are delighted to have you here and delighted to learn from you. And I just want to say that it takes a lot of courage to share your story, and not only have you shared it in your book, but that you're going to come here tonight in front of new friends who you haven't met everyone yet, and to share your story. It takes a lot of vulnerability and courage. So we really admire that, and we hope you know that this is a very welcoming and loving community, and we're just happy to learn from you tonight. Thank you. So much.
Can everybody hear me now? All right. Well, thank you for the wonderful welcome, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to share our story. 33 years ago, my husband John and I welcomed our son Jeremy into the world as what we thought was our daughter. We were wrong. Jeremy was always our son. We just didn't know it. When he was a toddler and a child, we called him a tomboy. That's what he called himself. It wasn't until he was 24 years old that he was really able to figure out and accept who he is, that he is a man, and to come out to not just his family, but to the world at large. And at that time gave me permission to write his story, which I'm hoping that you will read. I want to back up, though, and give you a little bit of definition, because what I've just described for Jeremy is a transgender man, actually a transgender gay man. And what it means to be transgender is not always clear to everybody. This is a new conversation that we're having. And John and I were not understanding, very confused, loving and supportive from the beginning, but we didn't know what we were doing. And so my hope is that by sharing our story and some definitions and some education and a little about the politics, that you will have a greater understanding than we did and be able to be more supportive of people in your lives who you may not have met yet or may not know that they're trans, but just to be loving and supportive. So what we found useful was to think about what it means if you're left-handed or right-handed. That's something that for most people, they figure it out very, very early. You probably don't remember a time when you didn't know if you were left-handed or right-handed, or maybe you're a twilight person with being ambidextrous, so somewhere in between. That's largely in the brain, whether you find it easier to work with your left hand or your right hand. In the same way, your gender is in your brain. I don't remember a time that I didn't know I'm a girl. John can't remember a time that he didn't know he was a boy. And I'm guessing if you think about your own background and your earliest memories, you're probably in the same situation. So that's gender. It's what you know yourself to be on the inside in your brain. But when we're born, the doctor looks at our outside physical characteristics and says, we've got a little boy, or we've got a little girl. Now, in my case, everything matched up. The person I knew myself to be in my brain, the gender I knew myself to be, matched what the doctor said he saw, and so I'm what's called cisgender. It all aligns. For Jeremy, the doctor looked at him and said, this is a little girl. The doctor didn't know on the inside, Jeremy in his brain knew that he's a boy. When the two don't align, that's when you're transgender. So for some people, they say, I'm a boy, regardless of what their physical characteristics were identified when they were born, or I'm a girl, or I'm somewhere in between. I'm both, or I'm neither. That's our Jeremy. He's transgender. What I want to do with you tonight is share his story a little bit. And you can read a lot more of it in the book. I'm not going to read the 300 pages out loud to you tonight, fortunately. But I do want to give you a flavor of what our lives have been like. And I'm going to go back first to when Jeremy was 4 years old, so a preschooler. And we thought of him as a tomboy, as I said. And in Texas, he wore the clothes that our community, our society thought of as little boy clothes. He had taken hand-me-downs from his brother rather than his sister when we presented him with a choice. So he chose his brother's clothes, his toys. All his friends happened to be little boys. The one thing that was different was in Texas, in our community, all the little boys had very short hair. And Jeremy's hair was down around his shoulders, shorter than most of what we thought of as the little girls, but longer than the little boys. So at one point, he wanted to go get his hair cut. And we weren't saying it was going to be real short, but just he was getting it cut at a place that normally catered to short haircuts. And he was excited about that. And we get started, and the stylist was so nice and so sweet and so inexperienced with long hair. What we ended up with was kind of a mess. And Jeremy, at 4 years old, with an artistic sense, he's looking in the mirror and he's pulling on his hair, trying to make it look right, make it the same length. I told him not to worry, that when we got home, I'd fix it. And as we left the salon, the barber shop, he says to me, "Don't worry, Mommy, you'll fix it when we get home." He trusted me. I didn't know how prophetic his words would be. When we got home, I sat him down in front of the mirror in the bathroom, wrapped a towel around him, and I started cutting. And I don't know if it was my inexperience with the scissors or the growing grin on his face, but before I was done, I'd given him a traditional Texas little boy haircut. Short, trimmed around the ears. He looked just like his big brother had 3 years earlier. And he was ecstatic. And I didn't understand why it made him feel so good to look the way we thought little boys looked. But I knew I'd made him happy. And as a mother, that's what I cared about. It was really interesting. The next day he went to preschool, where all his friends knew him by the little girl name and were used to his boyish clothes, and then he shows up with a boy's haircut. And he told me later that all day long kids were coming up to him saying, "Are you a boy or a girl?" Because they were confused. And I asked him what he said. And he told me that he didn't say anything. He liked having his friends not be sure. He liked having his friends think, maybe this is a boy. John and I didn't understand why that made him happy, but we loved him, we supported him, and we said, you dress however you want, you wear your hair however you want. And as partly a result of that, preschool was pretty easy for him, easier than for a lot of trans kids who are pushed to wear clothing that doesn't feel right to them, or to wear their hair in a way that doesn't feel right to them. We let Jeremy do whatever he wanted. And, we're children of the 60s, and that just seemed like the right thing to do. It worked. He was really happy in elementary school. But then as it got toward the end of it, something happened that made things more difficult. He was part of a football community. We're in Texas. Florida is almost as football-oriented as Texas, but not quite. So we would go to the high school games. We would occasionally go to college games. Then the kids would play, starting at a very young age, 6 years old, they'd start playing flag football. And play the same routes. They'd run the same routes as the high schoolers did, so that by the time the kids got to high school, they really knew what they were doing. Well, Jeremy chose to play football. He played on a flag team and then on a tackle team. And he would always say, I'm not making a political statement. I'm not doing this to show that girls can do anything boys can do. I just like playing football, and I just feel right being in with the guys. Well, it was more than the games, it was the practices, and it was the sleepovers. So all summer long, when the kids were out of season, these 8, 9-year-olds would spend the night at each other's homes. They would play football till it got too dark to see. Then they'd maybe watch a movie. They would have a barbecue. They'd talk well into the early morning hours, and it was community. And Jeremy had that with all these little boys. And then sometime around 5th grade, one of the parents was hosting a sleepover, and she called me that afternoon and said that Jeremy, well, using Jeremy's old name, can't come. He's getting too old to spend the night with the boys. Like that, Jeremy lost his social life. I want to share with you a brief passage from the book that's in his words about how he felt coming out of that and going into middle school and still playing football. He was viewed as the only girl on the team, and he played football all of 7th grade, all of 8th grade, making the history for that middle school. We thought he was happy. We didn't know. I will say that the book, when Jeremy graciously agreed to let me write it, he turned over to me a series of recordings that he had made as he was figuring out his identity. And he said I could use them. So I had them transcribed, and those became the basis for his voice in the book. And the passage I'm about to read to you is in his voice, largely in his words, though a little bit edited by me. You got a picture. He's in middle school. He's waiting for football practice to begin. They're out on the field, all the kids, all the guys. When we're on the field and suited up, my teammates forget that I'm a girl. With my shoulder pads and helmet, I don't look any different from them, and we're all caught up in the game. But I feel left out because we're no longer friends off the field. I thought 6th grade was tough, but 7th grade is even worse when it comes to fitting in. One day as we were hanging out before practice, waiting for the coaches to show up, I walked up to a group of guys who were laughing together. When I got there, though, they all went quiet. Whatever they were talking about, they didn't want to discuss it in front of me. Maybe it was girls or growing up and their bodies changing, but it made me really uncomfortable. So I climbed into the stands to sit alone, thinking it's okay that they don't want me around. I can deal. But I couldn't. I couldn't make the feeling go away. My throat hurt and my chest tightened, and I felt isolated and deserted as I thought about how long it had been since I'd hung out with my teammates, like when we were little kids. I no longer had a social life. What made it even harder for Jeremy was that John and I didn't know. He buried himself in activities. He played every sport the school had to offer, earning acknowledgement and accolades from the coaches, from his fellow students. He joined the art club. He was president of the art club. He played in the school band on the drum line. So we saw a kid that was involved. We didn't know that he was burying how unhappy he was. Well, I'm going to fast forward to when he was 23 years old, when everything kind of came to a head for him with our oldest getting married. So big sister Elizabeth asked Jeremy to be her maid of honor. And Jeremy, excited at the closeness of sisters, said yes, not thinking about what that would entail. But as the day got closer and closer, he started getting more and more nervous. Being a maid of honor is kind of one of the most feminine things you can do, especially the clothing, the dress. By the time Jeremy was 23 years old, he was presenting very androgynously. He still went by his old name, female pronouns. He wasn't saying he was trans, but he knew that he didn't like dresses. He wore his hair short. He actually had changed his name from his birth name to M, just going with the start of his name, so that it was genderless, it was androgynous. And as it got closer to the wedding, he was just torn up inside. And when the box arrived with the maid of honor dress, he didn't know what to do. After weeks of just letting it sit in the box under his bed where he didn't have to see it every day and didn't have to think about it, he decided with the wedding only a few weeks away, he had to try it on, he had to see. And he put it on. And he looked in the mirror. And he felt awful. But he didn't want to disappoint his big sister. He'd said he would be her maid of honor, and he couldn't wear this dress. Well, he had a lot of courage, and he called his big sister and told her he couldn't wear the dress. He couldn't explain why. He still wasn't accepting that he's transgender, that he's a man. But he knew that wearing the dress was impossible for him. And he said, but I've got an alternative. How about if I wear the same slacks as the bridegrooms, as the groomsmen, and a white dress shirt, a man's white dress shirt, and a vest that's the same color as all of the bridesmaids' dresses. And his big sister, not knowing what was going on, not understanding why, but just that it was important, said yes. Well, when the wedding came, Jeremy wore the clothes he was comfortable with and stood by his sister's side, and no one was bothered by it. I told him later how cute and adorable was, and he told me even later than that, that's not what he was going for. He really wanted people to say, you're so handsome. But Mom thought he was cute. Well, fast forward another few months, we had 2 big weddings in 3 months. So Big Brother Ben was getting married. And the woman who is now our daughter-in-law had asked Jeremy to be one of the bridesmaids, and Jeremy had said yes. So the two brides are on the phone to each other saying, you know how we had to do something different for the wedding, for the first wedding? You're going to have to figure out what to do for your wedding. So Jan didn't wait for Jeremy to say no. Jan and our oldest son, Ben, called Jeremy and said, we know you don't really want to wear the bridesmaid's dress. Why don't you just wear the same tuxedo that all the guys are wearing and stand with the men? So Jeremy stood by his brother's side for that wedding. That's acceptance. That's acceptance from the siblings. By the end of the second wedding, we all knew that Jeremy was scheduled for top surgery. Again, we didn't really understand why. Jeremy wasn't able to say the words, I'm trans. What he said was, I have gender dysphoria. My chest is not supposed to be shaped this way. It's supposed to be flat. And he researched it. He came to Florida where there was a wonderful surgeon that does nothing but top surgery. And he had a procedure that's equivalent to a double mastectomy with a little bit of added shaping to give him a masculine profile. And finally, when he walked by a reflective store window and could see his reflection, he liked what he saw. He would stand straight. He wouldn't always wear a sweatshirt hiding his shape. And he was happy about the way he looked, the same way he'd been happy about his short hair at 4 years old. And he felt great. And then a month went by. And he said, that's not quite doing it. I'm happy with the way I look now, but it's still not who I am. And with the help of a wonderful therapist, he figured out he could take baby steps and experiment with his friends with calling him he. He still wasn't saying I'm trans, but he started just experimenting a little. And finally, he had an experience. He came to visit us in Austin, Texas, and he went to a bar, to a gay bar, and introduced himself as Jeremy. And for the first time, other people were seeing him as the man that he is and totally accepted him. And he said, this is what I want. This is what I need. So we talked about it. We talked about the name Jeremy, but we didn't know for sure what he was going to do. But a few weeks later, we're looking at the computer at Facebook, and we said, oh my gosh, Jeremy's posted. Jeremy. What he wrote was, hey everybody, you may have noticed I've changed my picture and I've changed my name. Please start calling me Jeremy and start using male pronouns. And by the way, I'm about to start hormones, and so I'm going to essentially go through a male puberty. My voice might deepen. I might grow facial hair. That's it. Bye. And with that, he was out. Well, at this point, I was already a writer. I knew this was a possibility, so I was ready with something I'd written in my own head. I'd never put pen to paper, but I was bursting to share with people because this was such an exciting part of our lives, to watch our son come into his own. So I posted on Facebook, and I basically repeated the facts of the situation and then added how brave Jeremy is, how courageous, and how we had been with him every step of the way and would continue by his side wherever his journey took him. My post went viral, and I started hearing from Facebook friends of friends of friends thanking me for being accepting. So folks from all over the LGBTQ spectrum were writing and saying thank you. And then I started getting some very sad letters from young trans men who really identified with Jeremy. And they told me that when they told their parents, they got kicked out of their homes. And I was heartbroken. And at that point, John and I said, we have to do something. We have to learn everything we can. And we started doing more research, if that's possible, because we'd already researched it a heck of a lot. But we found out that over 40% of transgender teenagers have tried to die by suicide. Not just thought about it, but actually died. Actually tried. We have met young trans adults who have said to me after hearing me speak, I'm one of that 40%. We've talked with parents who found out their kids are trans when their kids left a suicide note. So we decided at that point we had to become advocates. It wasn't enough just to support our own son. We had to support everybody like him. That's when I joined the board for Equality Texas. And we started speaking out in gatherings like this with anybody and everybody who will listen, because we have to believe that with a growing awareness, we will find a growing acceptance. And it is tough right now. Politically, there are too many politicians who are trying to weaponize a fear of transgender people for political advantage. And so we're in a battle. And this is consuming all of our time, all of our passion. And I am incredibly appreciative to this community for giving us the opportunity to share, because it matters. You will make a difference. And my hope, my ask of you, is that coming out of this evening, that not only do you gain an understanding of what it means to be trans, but if you hear someone saying something derogatory about trans individuals, or someone supporting the proposed bills or laws that discriminate against trans people, that you'll be able to say, wait a minute, I know the mother of someone who is trans, and her son is a brave young man and deserves the same dignity and respect that we all want and deserve. And when you speak up, people will listen, and it will matter. So with that, I think we may have some questions. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with you.
Thank you to Joe for those moving words and your experiences, and thank you to all of you for staying In your sections, there are boards for question and answer. If you have, please write them down. I'll come collect them. Our first question is for you, Joe, and for John. With the microphone, you can take this one first. Are there any organizations or groups that you found as a parent have been really supportive or helped you to get a better understanding, in the parent sphere?
Terrific. I love the opportunity to share about resources. Here in Florida, you've got a wonderful organization called Equality Florida that is staffed by knowledgeable, caring individuals, and they have a branch that focuses specifically on supporting the transgender community. So I would say here in Florida, that's the first resource to look to. There are quite a few other smaller groups, but that one I know is here in the St. Petersburg, Tampa area. Another group is PFLAG. John and I actually have just recently started a PFLAG group in our local community. PFLAG is a parents' organization. It used to stand for Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, but recently they got rid of it as an acronym and just, it's the name because that was too narrow, because it's the whole spectrum, and it's parents and friends and family and allies, and so now it's just called PFLAG. It's a national group, and there are local organizations. I am assuming there is one for the Tampa area because basically every major city has a chapter. We started one in our own little town, and people have been coming out of the woodwork saying, we needed this support. There's a theater. A lot of theaters are very supportive. And John, maybe you want to talk about the one where you're on the board, the Ground Floor Theater, and its mission.
Well, art is always a very important way of communication and sharing, and so I serve on the board of a theater in Austin, Texas that is by charter and mission trying to serve underrepresented communities of all kinds. It's run by a trans woman who's one of the matriarchs of the trans movement, actually. And so they always do a lot of trans things, but they also trans plays and hire trans actors, but they also do a lot of things for with the disabled community, with the deaf community, with the racial minorities, communities of racial minorities. So lots of different things. So that's just an example. Another thing that I know is here in Florida is Keshet, the Jewish LGBTQ organization that supports them. And I don't know that they have presence here, but okay. All right.
So thank you, John. So Keshet, theater companies that focus on this, and the Anti-Defamation League, which John and I were on the board for that in first the Dallas area and then in Central Texas. And the Anti-Defamation League was started with the idea of fighting anti-Semitism 100 years ago, and quickly figured out that in order to fight anti-Semitism, you needed to fight discrimination of all kinds. So then there are national organizations like the ACLU and Lambda Legal and the Transgender Law Center. If you just Google how to support the transgender community, these names will come up. And they're just wonderful support organizations, and we've had the honor of meeting some amazing people. So another question.
Yes. Do you have any strategies for handling unapologetic bigots?
Okay, suggestions for handling unapologetic bigots. And we have met our fair share of them, especially in the political context. It's very painful to be at a hearing at the Texas State Capitol, and I know the same thing happens in Florida, and that people call out horrible things to children, like "you are the spawn of Satan" was one of the worst things that I have heard said to children. I have seen people spit on families saying that they are going to hell. I've seen bullying. It is very, very frustrating. I think of it as kind kind of three different ways to view individuals, and I realize there's an entire spectrum, and this is oversimplifying, but there are folks who are already aware of what it means to be trans and already supporting, and our fellow advocates really come into that category. In general, if someone has someone trans in their life and already knows, they become an advocate because it's so normal. And once you get to know someone, you realize it's completely okay. Then there's the majority of people who may be unaware, but want to learn, want to listen, are willing to be supportive. And I'm guessing that many of you are in that category, that you may not have known someone who's got a trans kid before, or not known that you knew someone, and now you do. And that's really a place where I feel like our talks can really be helpful. With the advocates and the allies that already are committed, we can be inspiring, and we can help energize them, and we try to do that. But for a large group, it's education. And then there are folks that we're never going to reach, that are unwilling to listen, are unwilling to open their hearts and minds. And I try not to worry about it. And that may, again, seem like an oversimplification. I will fight a lot when it comes to the politics of that, and we will go door to door at the Texas Capitol and in Washington, D.C., and talk to senators and representatives and congressmen to try to convince them not to pass bad bills. And sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not. So I don't ignore the folks that are, in some cases, spewing hateful material. But I don't take it personally. It's kind of, I will do what I can to protect my son and others like him, but I know I'm not going to reach everybody. All I can do is try. I used to focus a lot on the logic. I would come up with arguments and reasons that this bill shouldn't pass and that bill shouldn't pass, and I'd get up in public hearings and talk about that, as many other people did. And I realized it didn't matter what I said, because it wasn't being driven by logic, it was being driven by fear. It being the political weaponization of transgender lives. And so I've kind of stopped trying to come up with how to deal with folks that are unapologetically discriminating against trans people and fight the actions as opposed to the people. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you. We have time for a couple more. I apologize we didn't get to everyone's questions. Jo will be staying afterwards. We have complimentary copies of her book for you on your way out. So if your question wasn't answered or you think of something you didn't want everyone to share, Jo is more than welcome to answer that one-on-one. The next is a kind of multi-part question, a simple one. How old is Jeremy now? And a follow-up, you had mentioned about the haircut kind of being an early, before like 0 to 3, were there any signs or things that made you a bit curious about gender?
Sure. Okay, so Jeremy is 33 now, and he is flourishing. The best thing about this whole journey has been the chance to watch him just come into his own and be so much happier. When he was a little kid, the only signal, if we had known enough to pick up on it, was that when given the choice of the hand-me-downs from his brother and his sister, he infallibly took those from his brother. He always wanted to look like his brother and do everything his brother did. And I looked at that and said, oh, tomboy, because that's the way I was. And John would say, maybe something else is going on. And I said, no, one day it'll be like someone flips a switch and he'll be happy to be seen as a girl, and will have a crush on someone, and this will all be in the past. And if we had known then what we know now, we could have given him so much more. That's actually one of the biggest reasons that we share our story, is so that other parents don't regret not having provided the support. I wish that someone in the school system had said to us, your kid may be trans. I wish our pediatrician had said, let's bring in a a therapist of some sort. Or when Jeremy was a little older, let's have an endocrinologist join our team and look at what the options might be. And I like to think that had we had some guidance, we would have relied on a medical team to make better decisions than we were able to make when we were just struggling on our own and not understanding. So there were signals, we just didn't recognize them.
Before our last, we have a few questions that are kind of around the same. Before we do that, I wanted to thank you again for your time and sharing with everybody here. I also wanted to thank Rabbi Mangold and Mike Shapiro, President of the Board, for helping to support this, as well as Keshet, who helped coordinate, and our Ideas Committee, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Support. So we're going to try and do more, to be welcoming and inclusive to everyone. The final question is more of a statistical, if you have the answer. Are there more male to female conversion, more female to male? And is there kind of a general percentage, of misgender labeled?
So I don't know what the current statistics are in terms of how many trans men, how many trans women, how many non-binary percentages. The numbers keep changing on me as more research gets done. John, did you have? Okay. So it used to be that more women, especially in our age group, more trans women were speaking up, and I believe that there was a societal pressure that said for a trans man coming across as boyish as a child, we had a word for it. That was a tomboy, and we accepted it, and there wasn't a bad feeling about it. But if someone who was viewed as a boy was feeling inside, I'm a girl, our society bullied that kid a whole lot more. And so I think that for a while we saw a lot more trans women. As the societal acceptance has changed, I think it's balanced out some more. And what's really changing recently is the percentage of non-binary